What's going on, YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte. Second round series, Eastern Conference, Atlantic Division, down in the state of Florida. The Florida Panthers on one side and the Tampa Bay Lightning on the other. Does this look familiar? That's right, it's a rematch of the 2021 Stanley Cup playoff series between the Panthers and the Lightning. So, will we see a little bit of revenge here for the Florida Panthers? They had to watch Tampa lift the cup the past two seasons, knocked them out last year. Is it their destiny? Is it their future where they're lifting the Stanley Cup here in 2022? They're going to have to get past Tampa. We're going to go over this series in the Battle of the Sunrise State in today's video. So, without further ado, let's get into this matchup. Guys, we're in store for a good one. Looking at these two teams on paper, the rosters both very talented. I think that's kind of I think that's selling it pretty blunt. Both these teams are extremely talented. Lots of depth on both sides. And some pretty good goalies. So we're going to go over the head-to-head between these two teams during the regular season. They met 4 times this season, obviously being in the same division rivals. Carolina. The Panthers went 2-1-1, so they picked up a point in 3 of those 4 games. And Tampa Bay went 2-2 in this season series. Both of these teams are very talented, and I think both of them have kind of shown that through their first 2 games together. They're pretty evenly matched. So really nothing to look at here. Again, it's just kind of the head-to-head. Looking at their goals for this season. Now, this is going to be an interesting stat for this year in this series. So the Florida Panthers have scored the most goals per game this season, coming in at over 4 goals per game. And the Tampa Bay Lightning coming to this series 8th in the National Hockey League. Looking at goals against, this one is in favor of the Lightning. They have the 6th best in the NHL compared to the Florida Panthers, who sit 12th in the same category. Looking at both of these teams' power play, both lethal, so you don't want to take penalties in this series. Looking at Tampa, they're 8th in the league, and Florida, 5th best power play during the regular season. Looking at their penalty kills, Florida 16th in the NHL compared to Tampa Bay, who was 11th. So really not a big disparity between these two teams, whether it's goals for, goals against, power play, penalty kill. They're all pretty similar. It's going to be a very interesting matchup because there isn't really a defined edge for either of these sides that you can really look at. Looking at Tampa Bay. Now, Tampa Bay, looking at what they did in the first round, they had a really tough series in Toronto. And humble brag, but I did predict them to win that series in Game 7 before it even happened. I know. Kevin Dom is here. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, and this is what's going to happen here in the second round, right? So Tampa Bay was able to take care of business. They faced some controversy. They were down 3-2 in that series and won 2 elimination games against the Leafs, who didn't lighten up in either Game 6 or 7. That was a hard-fought series for Tampa. Meanwhile, for Florida, they had kind of a weird start to the series. They didn't start off too good. They were down 2-1 in this series and proceeded to win 3 straight to win their way into the second round. So Florida didn't start off too well, and then they really kind of took it back the last 3 games of this series against Washington. And again, I got that one right. Not only did I get the team right, but the amount of games. You're welcome, guys. So there we go. So that's what you're looking at. So now looking at these two teams, Tampa Bay, lots of poise in that lineup. Like I said, that was very evident in that first round series against Toronto. The pressure didn't really get to them in Game 6 or 7. And they were able to find a way to get it done. Andrei Vasilevskiy didn't look great in the beginning of this series. He had a couple games. He gave up way too many goals. That was not the case in Game 6 and 7. He really was able to reel it back and play the game that we know that Vasilevskiy can play. And his record in Game 7's still pretty damn good, and we saw that again here. So now looking at some kind of a storyline here is Braden Point. I mean, he did not look good in Game 7. He was limping around the ice, trying to turn. He couldn't even turn. He's definitely got a broken foot, or I hope it's just a foot injury and it's not something further up, because he was kind of reaching for like behind his, the higher part of his leg. So I hope he didn't hyperextend something. I mean, you could only hope for that stuff that doesn't happen, but that was a brutal hit, and I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't play the first 2 games of this series at the very least. And Tampa Bay's got some depth scoring. I mean, look at Game 7. I mean, freaking Nick Paul, 2 goals. I mean, absolutely incredible. They're going to need more of that. They're going to need more from guys like Brandon Hagel. That fourth line did not play well in Game 7. They need them to be better. So in that sense, Tampa Bay does have some things here that you're like, all right, they're a little bit, they do have weakness. You know, they aren't the same Tampa team we saw the last 2 years, but they are still the defending champs, and that is something that they're holding to this point. Meanwhile, for the Florida Panthers, super talented top to bottom, right? I mean, this is a team that basically had to trade Owen Tippett at the deadline because they didn't have space for him. Like, they were just that good. They did bring in Claude Giroux, so now you've got Claude Giroux, Barkov, Huberdeau. I mean, you go down the list. The amount of talent there is just incredible. Even Sam Reinhart scoring some big goals and overtimes and stuff like that. So the Florida Panthers they know what they have to do. Like I said, they've got the depth scoring. Carter Verhaeghe. Yes, Carter Verhaeghe. That Carter Verhaeghe has 12 points through the first 6 games of his Stanley Cup playoff season. And there's only one guy that has more points than him during the playoffs so far. And that's Connor McDavid, who has 14. So Carter Verhaeghe is second in the National Hockey League for points in the playoffs. Absolutely crazy. Not what I would have expected. But the really interesting thing here is, how is Bobrovsky going to play? Because you could argue that is part of the reason they lost this series last year, was just Bobrovsky just wasn't good enough. And I worry that he could fall victim to that here in round 2. Especially when you're battling Vasilevsky. I think that this is going to be a tough series here for Bobrovsky. He really has to dial it in and be almost perfect. And that's why I think this series could be tough for the Florida Panthers. But with that said, what are we looking at here? Because I think you could argue, I think it's going to be pretty even, whether it's Tampa or Florida that wins this series. And the only thing I look at here is, Tampa isn't the team we saw last season. And this isn't a discredit to Tampa, what they've done this year. But they don't look like the same Lightning team. And now with Braden Point's out, that's even more reason for concern. So when I look at these two teams on paper with injuries and stuff now, I do like Florida. The only thing I hesitate, though, with Florida is Bobrovsky. So I'm kind of sitting here with these 2 jerseys in hand. Shout out to both these teams, because both very sexy looking jerseys. Next to a really nice face, which obviously doesn't hurt. But I really don't know what to think here, because, like I said, I think the battle is going to come down to the goalie duel, and the fact that now Braden Point's gone. That's a lot of depth for the Tampa Bay Lightning out of the lineup. So I guess you have to decide. You have to be able to decipher which is more important: the depth scoring and the depth players, and Braden Point being out, and compared to, say, a Sam Bennett for the Florida Panthers, or the goaltending. And what do they always say? Defense wins championships, right? But goaltending is also extremely important, and honestly a big part of that defense. So if I had to go between Vasilevsky and Sergei Bobrovsky, on the fly, I'm changing my pick. I have in my notes here, Florida in 7. Going with the Tampa Bay Lightning, ladies and gentlemen. I think the Tampa Bay Lightning, the defending champs, the way they handled the adversity in that first round series, and Vasilevsky. They have Andrei Vasilevsky. And as much as losing Braden Point sucks, and it's definitely a sting to this team, they have so much depth still. And I think that despite losing Braden Point, if I had to choose between Vasilevsky and Sergei Bobrovsky for this series to maybe steal you a game or 2, I'd put my money on Vasilevsky, because, again, he's won back-to-back Stanley Cups. And Sergei Bobrovsky has not won as many series in 2 or 3 seasons, since he's come to Florida, that Vasi has over the last, in the Cup run, right? So When I look at these teams, it's going to be interesting. He was the guy that did beat the Tampa Bay Lightning back in, what was that? The Columbus Blue Jackets swept them, right? So there is that. That is something to remember here. If history were to repeat itself, that is something to consider. But with that said, I am going with the Tampa Bay Lightning winning this series in 7 games. Guys, that is it for today's video. Let me know what you think. Who takes the Battle of the Sunrise State here in the second round and goes to the Eastern Conference Final? Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.